life skills that are important, that is the effective communication and self-awareness. And now we'll be dealing with some of the other core life skills which are important. And today we'll be dealing with the interpersonal relationships. We know that when people deal with others, they develop certain sort of relationships. And the close association between individuals who share common interests and goals is known as interrelationship. And one needs to be comfortable in one's relationship. Otherwise, they would not be healthy or happy. And the interpersonal relationships, what one develops during one's childhood, try to remain the same with other partners or in the family. And we also see that the relationships do matter in the organizational setup. We know that the individual's interpersonal relationships, when people share these relationships, they have certain common goals and objectives, either in organizations or in the family front or between individuals. We see that most of the time that the relationships are based on having the common goals and objectives. And also we see a sense of trust among these individuals. Individuals must have the healthy interpersonal relationships. They are necessary for sustenance. And transparency is another factor where people are open about their ideas and thoughts. That is very important, either in organizations or in family setup or between the relationships between individuals. Now we know that an individual working in isolation can be prone to lots of stress and anxiety, whereas a person who has good interrelationships, he is able to survive well, he is able to get his tasks done well, and he is also, because of the social recognition he gets, he is very happy and healthy. Now, we know that a single brain cannot take all the decisions, and interpersonal relationships do have an effect on getting the work done, especially in organizations. This has a direct effect because the organizational culture where there are good interpersonal relationships can do better. We need people around us who can appreciate us and motivate us from time to time. So we require a sort of motivation to get along in life, and it always pays to have individuals who can look at us, evaluate us, and critically tell us what is right or wrong with us. And we can get along with all the other workers or other objectives of the works, or are able to get something done with this sort of framework. So support of fellow workers is very essential. Now, when we consider the stages of any relationship, it is said to follow 5 stages according to George Levinger. He says in every relationship, first comes acquaintance, where people get acquainted with each other. And then there is a build-up stage where the people get to know each other and they understand the events and the other aspects of the persons and the character of the person. They start trusting each other. They've tried to be compatible with each other, and which may continue for a long time, this sort of association. And all during this build-up stage, you see that individuals with similar backgrounds and interests try to continue to maintain the relationship and sustain the relationship, even though they come from different backgrounds. The third stage is the continuation stage, where this blossoms into a more longer commitment, and you find the individuals happy with each other, and they decide to be in each other's company. And after the continuation stage, we find the deterioration stage, because not all relationships pass through this stage, but sometimes the relationship reaches such a stage where the person is no longer able to get along with other. Sometimes it does not happen. And if it does not happen, it will lead to a lifelong happy relationship, which may only terminate. That is the 5th stage, where one person may die, or there may be some sort of gap created because of going away from one person to another to a different location, etc., which may be circumstantial. Otherwise, sometimes the relationship decay in the deterioration stage itself. So we have got the acquaintance stage, the build-up stage, the continuation stage, the deterioration stage, sometimes, which is not seen always. And we also have the termination stage, where all relationships come to an end. As Lord Buddha says, every relationship, every chance meeting has to end with a parting. Likewise, the relationships too have their own cycle. Now, the factors affecting the relationship or the interpersonal relationship are Compatibility, that is, if one person is able to get along with others' attitudes, thought processes, etc. So if a persons are compatible, the relationship do have a positive effect on each other. Communication is another important aspect of any interpersonal relationship. If one communicates well and the other person also is able to receive or communicate back or gives the feedback, then such a relationship has, it gains what we call more strength, and it is able to sustain for a longer time. The clarity of thoughts in expressing is also one of the important features in trying to gain the trust of the other person. So besides compatibility and communication, being honest about each other's views and staying calm in spite of any problems and not overreacting and having a forgiving attitude and spending time on each other's company and able to react to others with a smile or with a positive words, all these do have a bearing on relationship. We know that every relationship requires time and individual efforts to what we call sustain that relationship. If there are any differences which may crop up any time during the relationship phase, now these have to be sorted out amicably, because every person develops any sort of relationship with others, and to have healthy relationships which can have again a psychological bearing on the individual, it is necessary that these relationships should be groomed, should be cultivated, and as I was saying, depends on various factors, but the individual's efforts in trying to develop interpersonal relationships also does matter. Now, the role of communication in interpersonal relationship is very important. We know that when individuals do not express or reciprocate their feelings or the ideas, whatever one person thinks or thoughts one has, they're not communicated to the other person, and therefore it would be difficult for the person to develop any proper healthy relationship. Feelings have to be expressed. Sometimes we express our feelings through non-verbal modes of communication like gestures, body movements, and also facial expressions, hand movements, and we communicate with eye movements too. Now, when we communicate with each other, we have to take care of our tone and pitch. The way we communicate also affects the other person. Being loud may hurt the other person too. So we have to speak in a convincing way, in a soft manner. The choice of words is another important factor when we are trying to develop a relationship. When we say something and when we mean something, it means the other person may misinterpret us. So an individual must interact with other persons regularly and try to reach out to the other person in order to cultivate a healthy relationship. Being polite and trying to understand other person's point of view may also be helpful in developing a relationship. So interpersonal relationships, developing them is also a social skill which helps actually the person fare better in the world, and this is considered one of the life skills. Now, empathy is another aspect, that is, it is a emotional skill. So this means trying to take care of the other person and their desire to help them. We know that empathy is the ability to read other person's emotions coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or what they are feeling. So when we try to imagine what the other person's point of view is, and when we try to see it from their position and feel what they must feel, and that is known as empathy. Now, empathy is important when we are trying to develop the social relations. The social connections are important for physical and psychological well-being, as I was saying, and empathizing with others will help us to know the individuals better, and also emotional regulation helps. And in times of great stress, when we are overwhelmed, we know that empathy helps in promotes in helping others. Now, what are the elements of empathy? The Daniel Goleman, who is a psychologist, has expressed the elements of empathy as understanding others, trying to develop others. When somebody is in a pitiable condition or in economically poorer condition, when one tries to help them out of a situation, either financially or through support, then that is trying to develop others, that is acting on one's needs and concerns and helping them to develop their full potential. For this, one requires a service orientation. And also we should see that one accepts and also is considerate of diversity. We know that everybody's backgrounds are not same and everybody's orientations are not same, and people do differ in their preferences and also diverse in their cultural and religious and other backgrounds. And when we try to be tolerant and without having any bias or having stereotypes in which we think a person must act in particular way because he belongs to a particular religion, particular caste, particular sex, then we are trying to stereotype such persons, and such biases must be removed in order to understand that there may be diversity and everybody is unique, every human is unique. And how can we say a person has empathy? As I was saying, when we try to understand and develop others, sympathize with others, with the service orientation mode, or try to leverage diversity, these are certain signs, but at the same time, we have some specific signs. For example, a person who is empathetic is very good at listening to other people and understanding their point of view, and he is able to actually pick up from the situation how the other person is feeling. And also, other people come to such empathetic people for advice. This is one of the ways to pick up the which person has empathy. Sometimes when people are overwhelmed by tragic events or when they are suffering, we are able to sympathize with such persons, and this tells us we are empathetic. Sometimes when people are not honest, some people are able to pick out the other person is not honest, and this is also because of the empathy. Empathy results because of our neurons are able to actually understand from the other person's cues that this person is behaving in such a manner because of such a predisposition or because he feels in such a way. So understanding other people's cues also is a factor which is an element of empathy. Now we know when people, as everything has an effect, a side effect, here also we know when people are more empathetic, it means they also get burdened with other people's problems, and they care deeply about other people and they feel the readiness to help the needy, but sometimes at their own risk. Now we find it difficult to, or they find it difficult also to set boundaries of relationships with people, and sometimes these people may impinge on this person. So it may be costly socially also. Though empathy is found to be a good factor, again it has to be in boundaries. But then this is because getting burned of trying to think other person's problems and getting overwhelmed, this may also cost a person psychologically. Empathy, sympathy, and compassion, if we try to understand, as I was saying, empathy is about experiencing the feelings of the others through the power of imagination, whereas sympathy is feeling something, what we call somebody's distress we feel, at the same time we are unable to contribute something, then that becomes sympathy. Compassion is also an element of action which is lacking in sympathy. Here, people may take certain actions and that is compassion, but empathy is trying to completely experiencing the feelings of the others for ourselves. Now we have dealt with some of the aspects of the, what we call the aspects of the life skills which deal with communication, interpersonal relations, and self-awareness, which are called as the psychosocial skills. And these psychosocial skills, besides the cognitive skills, help a person to manage himself well in society by having proper empathy and developing proper interpersonal relationships through proper communication. Now, when one considers how a person is able to manage himself, that becomes a life skill by itself, and this is known as self-management skills. Now, the self-management skills are those characteristics which actually means having the self-confidence, persistence, and resilience and patience, and having self-control and self-regulation and ability to control one's thoughts, actions, and behaviors in different situations. These focus on people's responsibility in areas of organizing, goal setting, time management, self-motivation, and accountability, and also managing one's activities in the workplace. Now, the importance of self-management skills are They help because they help you to become more organized. They give you a chance to work better and have a better chance of being successful in life. They lead to career growth and a better chance of success in what at professional level and at personal level. And if they are achieved, they make you motivated to do something else, and they help to give you the confidence to process through various activities and various situations. And the person's success or failure depends on one's self-management skills. Now, the self-management skills are composed of a repertoire of skills. For example, from self-confidence. Confidence means, fide means to trust. So self-confidence means to have trust in oneself. Now, self-confidence is trying to understand your own judgment, the ability to believe in yourself, value yourself, and know your own worthiness. And regardless of any imperfections or what others people feel in you, if you are confident enough, that means the individual trusts himself, his abilities and his capacities and judgments, and he is able to face the challenges and demands. And we know that the self-efficacy, self-confidence, self-esteem, these are the different terms. And the self-efficacy means the individual believes about their capacity to influence others in their own life. And self-esteem is something which a person has the feeling of his own self-worthiness. It's a sort of the total summation of the experiences till then, and what a person believes in himself or in his own worth. This actually is dependent on the individual's abilities and also to handle the situations in different times in different situations, how he handles himself, that results in the self-esteem. This is a forward-looking belief. If a person has self-esteem, he is able to, that is the net worthiness of himself, he is also able to look forward on how good or how well he will be able to achieve something. Now, if we consider the self-confident behavior, this is a trait of understanding or believing in one's overall capability. The confident behavior is shown by a person in trying to be right, even when others mock or criticize, and be willing to take risks and do something which even takes an extra mile to do, and also admitting one's mistakes and learning from them and trying to develop a goal and the possible steps to attaining the goal. And even when someone criticizes, to be able to do well and at the same time able to congratulate on one's accomplishments as well as the others' accomplishments. Whereas people who have low self-confidence, they are actually governed by what other people think, and they try to stay in their own comfort zone, fearing failure, and they work hard to cover up their mistakes and hope that somebody will fix their problems, and they try to extol or try to praise themselves or extol their own virtues. Now, these low self-confidence people are not able to solve their own problems. Instead, they are creating a veneer which actually will again try to give them low self-confidence. So trying to have realistic expectations, communicating assertively and handling criticism, and trying to acknowledge one's failures and mistakes and trying to do something about it, these whole things gives self-confidence. Whereas low self-confidence actually develops in people who have who grow up in certain circumstances or in families which are unsupportive, and where there is lots of critical environment, and being separated by the family or friends who do not give you enough motivation, this also will give low confidence. And judging oneself too harshly, trying not to evaluate the other factors which actually influence one's success or failure, and being afraid of failure instead of trying to go headlong with whatever is positive. And this will also try to create low self-confidence, and people with low self-confidence try to do more errors, and again this will result in low self-confidence. So perceptions of low or high or self-confidence, how you perceive yourself, also has a bearing on how effectively you are able to do with certain problems, or trying to solve certain things, or trying to get along with certain actions. And therefore, this is also considered a life skill. The traits of a self-confident person, if we were to consider, we generally see these people are able to love themselves. They get their happiness from their work and from within. They are grateful for whatever they have achieved in one's life. They try to take things as they come. They never give up, but they continue to do their work. They are prepared. They speak with certainty. They do take risks. And when somebody else achieves a job, they applaud a job well done. And they are not afraid to be wrong. They listen more than when they speak, because it is in understanding that they try to come over to a solution. And also they are modest. They are not afraid to ask for help if the situation demands. And they do dedicate time to what is important. And they also do exercise. Now, how this actually, we have certain strategic tools. It's not that one is born with life skills or self-confidence. Here, some guidance may be required, which may be provided from time to time. And coach can give a person strategic tools to develop self-confidence, to reach success. And building confidence is a journey, not a what we call a destination, but at the same time, one requires to have a coach if one needs to be more productive. Now, how does one develop self-confidence? This self-confidence needs time. In the challenging world of business or life in general, we may take the self-confidence either from the family or friends who are supportive. And one has to have the belief that if I'm strong, I am smart, I am good enough, and people will like me. And this is a sort of trying to give oneself auto-suggestion. And this is also an effective tool. So cultivating a positive mindset, and also stop comparing yourself or oneself with others, stopping comparing, and understanding what one has achieved against one's circumstances in one's life, and understanding what things we are good at, and trying to learn something every day, something new, and removing negativity from one's life, and celebrating small successes, and always trying to interact with other people, conversing with other people, and developing new skills, and being positive and pushing up instead of giving up, that is being self-motivated. All these factors help to build up the self-confidence. Now, self-esteem is something different. This is what we call the total summation of the self-worthiness and individual. Self-confidence is something how we act in a particular situation, but self-esteem is the individual sense of self-worthiness. For example, we know that it is a human need that an individual must be socially acceptable, and he requires this self-esteem to be normal and for survival, and it rises automatically based on a person's beliefs and consciousness of his own self-worth or personal value. Now, this may come from the appraisals of one's own appearance or one's own performance in a situation, or one's own beliefs, emotions, and motivation and success. Now, low self-esteem may actually hold a person back. For example, if a person is successful, he's successful at oratory, or he's successful at games, automatically he is applauded, and it raises its self-worthiness or self-esteem based on the experience he had. And this is a sort of self-esteem builds up in the person, and later he is able to do certain other jobs again related with oratory or swimming or any other skill with more aplomb, and therefore this again gives him more what we call esteem. Whereas the persons with low self-esteem, who are not given much of a chance to practice, or not applauded, their self-esteem remains at a low level, and therefore they have no chances to actually navigate through the life with positive or assertive attitudes. Now, James 1980 defines self-esteem as the satisfaction or dissatisfaction with oneself, and is a judgment of opinion one holds on oneself. And Rosenberg talks about the favorable and unfavorable attitude towards life. Now, there are both the self and high and low self-esteem. And people with high self-esteem, they feel that they are worthy of living, they are self-confident, they accept themselves unconditionally with all their mistakes or positive attributes. They seek continuous self-improvement. They are at peace with themselves. They enjoy good interpersonal relationship. They tolerate frustrations well. They are assertive and they are willing to take the risks, calculated risks, and they are self-directed. Whereas the person with low self-esteem, they do not take risks. They're afraid of competition challenges. They are non-assertive. They stay back and they lack the initiative to take part in any action. They are very shy. They lack self-acceptance. They blame others for their mistakes or shortfallings, and they have no aspiration to succeed, and they are indifferent to the needs of the others. They're concerned about themselves, but they're not able to come out at the same time, and they're very indecisive in their actions. Now, we know that our thinking, the age, the illness or disabilities, physical limitations, and the job, whatever one is doing, can limit the self-esteem. Whereas there are certain genetic factors that also shape a person's personality, but basically it's our experiences that form the basis for the self-esteem. Those who constantly receive acclaim are able to do, are able to have better self-esteem, and the persons who have a negative assessment from the family or friends, they tend to have low self-esteem. So it's the family environment and the achievement focus that the family gives upon. Some families give importance to more achievement and the environment, as well as the physical appearance of the individual, and also the belief on oneself and how good a person is in a task or task proficiency that can help the person. Also, feedback from friends and family and peers may also help to develop the self-esteem. We know that the physical appearance has an bearing on the self-esteem in the sense that more physically attractive people with good hair or physical appearance, height and weight, they tend to get social acclaim. So it's the environmental aspect or the feedback that the person gets from the environment that helps to develop the self-esteem in an individual. But then again, the self-esteem can be increased by having the support, as well as trying to, one may develop the self-esteem by oneself by having a self-esteem inventory to give you a baseline to understand. For example, if we were to say, mention your 10 weaknesses and 10 strengths, if we are able to list out the 10 weaknesses and 10 strengths, it gives an idea of how much worthy we are and what aspects we need to improve. Now, this helps us to set realistic aspirations, expectations, and also one need not be a perfectionist. At the same time, one is trying to do something well. Also, one should be able to explore oneself and be willing to adjust the self-image and stop comparing oneself with others, and make a positive self-dialogue which helps the person to do something realistically well, and also spend some time with oneself or meditate or try to understand what goes on and how one can develop one's self. Now, there is another aspect, another skill, which is also helps to have self-management, and that would be known as anger management. We know that we are all, in spite of trying to be calm, we tend to get angry with either persons or the situation. And it is an emotion, a normal emotion, which is neither good nor bad. But when we know when situations are upsetting, unjust or threatening, people have this reaction to be angry. But then it is normal to express in a way that does not harm yourself or others. But sometimes anger is more likely to have a negative impact on the other people you see. Sometimes anger may impair your judgment. You may make certain decisions which actually can have negative consequences. So how one handles anger is very important. Therefore, anger management is called a skill. We know that if we were to persist with anger, it may have the effects on our physical well-being as well as on our mental health. And sometimes if we were to express our anger in organizations, that it may also impair our career, and also our relationships may also get threatened either at home or at organizations. So the friendships and work relationships may get affected. Sometimes if the parents are angry, the children may get affected at home. Now, what is anger management? Anger management is trying to control the emotion or the physical arousal that anger can cause. Now, it is generally impossible to avoid all the people that causes or the settings which actually incite anger in us, but then we can try to respond in a proper, what we call appropriate manner to anger. And this is, it does not mean one should internalize anger or should suppress anger, because when one suppresses anger, it may result in other physical ailments. Therefore, we should find ways to express our anger appropriately. We know that there are different techniques of anger management. One may take a deep breath, or one may try to focus on one's breath and clear all thoughts and calm the muscles. And also one may try to relax, but then one should breathe and focus on one's body and try to stay calm. Or also some people try to resort to boxing, where they go on trying to punch the bag, what we call the punching bag, instead of a real person. This is a way of high intensity output exercise. At the same time, it also helps the person. And sometimes some people take a brisk walk, going away from the situation, which helps us to control the anger. Some people go for weightlifting, which will result in reduced anxiety and reduced irritability levels and increased self-awareness. Some people join the team sports, which actually help to join other groups and lessen the mental stress. Sometimes skipping or aerobic activities also help in reducing the stress, and yoga. So whenever a person is angry, he may resort to either physical exercises or yoga, or mental relaxing exercise like meditation, or he may step away from the situation, try to breathe in and breathe out, and have a good control on his thought processes and try to control the anger. So when we try to, what we call, instead of trying to manage our anger, if we were to vent out, it is also possible we are not only causing ourselves physically illness, at the same time also proning ourselves to lots of mental stress, which may again lead to physical ailments, and also threatening or trying to resorting to violence may actually help upset the situation, damage our relationships, and also it helps us to it also helps us. Anger management helps us to overcome the situation in a positive way. Now, if we were to consider the cognitive skills as well as the life skills, we know that the assessment of life skills can be assessed both formally and informally. The informal assessment is observation-based, but assessment of functional living skills, what skills one possesses, is told by UNICEF. The UNICEF has given the assessment of functional living skills, AFLS guide, which actually covers 735 living skills. Now, the AFLS can be given by either a caregiver, parent, or educator, which actually tries to understand how many living skills the student or the child possesses. Also, we have got assessment scales by Shubhashree and Radhakrishnan Nair, which was given in 2010, which tries to give us the life assessment scale. Now, this helps us to understand what sort of skills a person possesses and which aspects a person can develop. Now we'll be dealing with the topic of emotional intelligence. According to the American Psychological Association, emotion is a complex reaction pattern involving the emotional intelligence is defined as a complex reaction pattern involving experiential, behavioral, and psychological elements. Emotions tell us how individuals deal with matters or situations they find personally significant. Robert Sternberg defined intelligence as the mental abilities necessary for adaptation, as well as selection, as well as shaping of environmental context. Now, we know intelligence is the individual's abilities to understand complex ideas, to adapt effectively to environment, to learn from experience, and to engage in involving forms of reasoning, and to overcome obstacles by careful thought. Now, emotional intelligence deals with the ability to perceive some things and evaluate and control are emotions. Now we know emotional intelligence can be both learned and strengthened, and also some claim it is an inborn characteristic. Psychologists Mayer and Salovey have said that there are actually the emotions which can be shaped properly. They need not be reviewed in the negative context, and they actually are the ability to perceive emotions, to access them and generate emotions, so that by understanding the emotions, we should be able to regulate them effectively and gain success. So emotions also are supposed to lead to intellectual growth. Originally, it was thought that only the cognitive skills would help an individual develop in a particular setting, but it is learned gradually. Understanding our own emotions and others' emotions and trying to control and manage emotions can actually lead to the overall development of the individual and his success also. Daniel Goleman in 1995, in his book on emotional intelligence, which has become very popular, has said that that emotional intelligence is important for a person's success. In 1996, Raven Baron, he said, emotional intelligence is the ability to deal successfully with other people and with our own feelings. He actually developed an inventory which helps to validate the measure of in emotional intelligence and the ability to deal with daily environmental challenges, and helps for one's success both professionally and personally. So this inventory which he has developed covers 5 areas. Intrapersonal, that is a person, how he deals with, he tries to control. Interpersonal, what sort of a intelligence one person shows with others. The adaptability of persons, the stress management, and general good mood. Now, we know that the array of non-cognitive intelligences and social abilities or emotional abilities, competencies, and skills that actually help an individual to succeed in coping with environmental demands and pressures are the emotional intelligence. At the same time, Peter Salovey and Mayer says the ability to perceive emotions, to access and generate emotions so as to assess thought, and to understand one's own emotions and the emotional meanings, and to reflectively regulate the environments or the emotions in such a way that promote the intellectual growth as well as emotional growth is said to constitute emotional intelligence. And Hain in 2009 says the mental ability we are born with, which gives our emotional sensitivity and emotional management skills, helps us in long-term health, happiness, and our survival. Goleman talks as the emotional intelligence, says emotional intelligence is something which refers to the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and the feelings of others, and for motivating ourselves and managing emotions within us and our relationships. So Dalip Singh in 2003 says that the emotional intelligence is the ability of an individual to appropriately and successfully respond to a vast variety of emotional stimuli being elicited from the inner self as well as the outer environment, and being successfully able to get over them and be able to manage them well. Now, we know that the nature of the emotional intelligence is, we know that the IQ or the intelligence quotient is important for a person to succeed. At the same time, the emotional quotient is also important. We do not think that the emotional quotient is important. At the same time, we know that for the 20% of success life is contributed by IQ, the remaining 80% is supposed to be contributed by the person's emotional intelligence and how his knowledge of how to deal with his own emotions as well as with other people's emotions. Now, emotional intelligence is the best predictor of success in life. Emotional intelligence is largely learned. It may not be already generally present genetically. At the same time, not fixed genetically, but then one has to develop it throughout one's life. We know that it is required for people for being happy. We know that it increases with age and experience. Our knowledge of other people's emotions develops with age. We know that the women tend to be stronger in empathy and also in social skills, whereas men are more stronger in self-regulation skills. Now, it's not always that the people's emotions are told through words, it is through cues that we should be able to understand the emotions. Sometimes it is through the voice, the gestures, and facial expressions one is able to understand the emotional intelligence. So, how a person develops the emotional processing abilities or the emotional intelligent, how he's able to read it in a particular situation, other people's feelings actually help the individual to cope up with other people as well as life situations. Now, the characteristics of emotional intelligence, according to Daniel Goleman, is people with emotional intelligence actually have some 5 elements, which are the characteristics. One is self-awareness. That is, a person is able to recognize his own emotions, he is able to recognize his own feelings, and he is able to make healthy decisions based on the healthy balance of emotions and reasoning. That is, he is neither not too overly reasoning or not too overly emotional. A healthy balance between the brain and the heart, or between the feelings and the thoughts, as well as emotions and the knowledge, actually helps a person to be successful in life. His ability to manage and takes responsibility for one's own life and the personal self-motivation, personal happiness, and knowing the difference between feelings and actions, and trying to be aware of all these that comprise self-awareness. Then there is self-regulation. We know that people have also to react properly to certain things. Frustration, intolerance, and anger, all these may have negative consequences, whereas trying to be less aggressive, having more positive feelings, trying to be tolerant, and trying to manage one's own anger can be actually contribute to a person's well-being as well as contribute positively to the environment. So self-regulation, besides self-awareness, is also important characteristic feature of emotional intelligence. We also talk about motivation, empathy, and social skills. Motivation is the ability to drive oneself forward. The empathy is trying to be comfortable with others and trying to understand one's other person's perceptions. And social skills are having the ability to have develop good interpersonal relationships, trying to resolve conflicts and having better negotiation skills, and the ability to analyze and understand relationships and resolving conflicts and disagreements and solving problems in relationships and being more assertive at the same time in communicating and more popular and outgoing. Now, if we were to see the components of the emotional intelligence, we see that there is personal competence and social competence. The personal competence features are self-awareness and self-management, and the social competence features are social awareness and relationship management. The social awareness, under social awareness, we have got the empathy, and under self-awareness and self-management, we also have got the motivation. So we can say that self-awareness and social awareness help you to gain recognition, whereas self-management and relationship management try to regulate your own management, or try to regulate your relationships. So it is a sense of self as well as the environment. It is a self-awareness and awareness about the society. And it is self-management as well as our management of relationships with others that contribute to the emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is important in the sense it helps you to develop, be physically well, mentally well, and also be good at the workplace, and helps you to make positive decisions, personal decisions, and attain positive results. Now, self-management exercises that may help a person are breath control, and also trying to have a journal. Journal, actually, you can write down the thoughts, and this is a way of expressing one's thoughts. And when one tries to resolve a conflict, or when one is faced with stress, he should try to count to 10 or stay away from arguments as much as one can. One should avoid confrontations if one is not able to control one's emotions. So one should go away from the place, or one should try to breathe in for a few minutes, or try to relax, or one should try to exercise or walk, have a walk, or share the problems with someone with whom one is closer with. This is how one tries to manage the stress. It is a self-management exercise. Also, one may cognitively reconstruct, that is, think in his brain, what is wrong with the situation? How can I ideally cope up with this? Why did I feel in such a way? How does the other person feel in this? What is the lesson I have learned from this? Is there any other way of reacting to a particular situation? These sort of reconstruction exercises may help the individual for a better understanding, and therefore help to better manage the situation. Also, one may have the problem-solving checklist, that is trying to understand the problems, how they are impacting one's life, and how one can strategize to solve them, and how one can resolve the problems. So also, we can also have what we call better relationship management. That is, we know that we have to explain our position to other person, and we should know that little things like sorry and please do matter. One should share one's feelings and be open about. And if there is a tough conversation that should be handled, one should not run away from it, but listen actively, listen to the other person, not jump to conclusions, and accept if we are wrong, and at the same time agree to disagree. That is, always take care to end the what we call such a dialogue on a positive note, lest that a situation may result in a what we call a bad relationship or a relationship gone sour. So emotional intelligence is something which helps us to understand, manage, evaluate ourselves, our emotions, as well as emotions of other persons, other members. It is very important for harmonious living, and both individual level or at the societal level or at the organizational level. And emotionally well-developed individuals are capable of managing the conflicting situations. They are able to endure stress. They are able to endure the frustration, and they can make some sort of solutions to the problems and make reasonable decisions. Now, this all again can have a bearing on the psychological well-being of the individuals. So, in this aspect, we have tried to understand the different aspects of emotional health, the need for health, the components of health, as well as the factors that result in good emotional intelligence. Now we should understand the positive psychological capital. The positive psychological capital or positive psychology, this is what actually enhances human functioning by recognizing one's own strengths as well as deficiencies, and the environmental resources one has instead of the stressors also. We do have the stressors in the environment which causes us the fatigue and frustration, but we should also understand that there are environmental resources. The positive psychological capital is the core area of the positive psychology. Now, the propounder of this theory is Martin Seligman, who said, instead of considering the psychology as a preoccupation with the wrong and dysfunctional, why don't we consider it as something which deals with people with what is right and good about them? Because it is always the good thoughts, good ideas that try to give rise to good in people. And instead of focusing on all the wrong and the dysfunctional aspects, one should focus on the strengths or how one could actually be positive about oneself and try to develop. And again, the Fred Luthans and colleagues have theoretically talked about the core construct called psychological capital or PsyCap. That is, this is what you have, the physical is of whatever you may have, or what background you come from, what financial setting you come from, or with how you are, what social network you have, or the human capital, or the abilities, or the experience, or knowledge you have. In spite of all that, maybe you have a positive psychological state where you have the confidence to take on and put in the necessary efforts, and with your positive contribution or attribution, succeed in the things you do, and again redirect the paths or goals, so that when we are beset with problems and anxieties, we not be bored or sustained, or we need not go down, but instead of that, we may bounce back or show resilience and attain success. Now, the PsyCap focuses on the strengths of the individual rather than the weaknesses, and it tries to focus on the health and vitality aspects of the individuals rather than the illnesses and pathological issues, which are more of a concern to psychology. Now, the components of the positive psychological capital talks about the self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is an individual believes in one's own capacity to do certain things which actually produce some specific performances. Now, this is dependent on the behavioral performance. If somebody does well in a particular situation, and if a person may feel that he can do well again, that is known as self-efficacy. But then all individuals may not be showing self-efficacy in different fields. One may show self-efficacy, say, in playing basketball, but not self-efficacy in, say, oratory. So these things differ. Now, self-efficacy beliefs assume depending on the domain of functioning in circumstances surrounding, the behavior has the propensity to occur again and again. And Snyder et al. In 1991 defined hope as a positive motivational state, which is interactively based, and which is also a component of the psychological capital. Also, optimism and resilience are other factors which contribute to the psychological capacity or capabilities of an individual. The psychological capital is therefore concerned with self-efficacy, hope, optimism, and resilience. Also, a person should be able to deal with conflicts. And if one is able to deal with conflicts, he has the ability to understand and also try to deal with different conflicts, then such a person is said to be having a sort of a life skill. And with this, we'll come to an end here, and we'll be dealing with conflict management and how one person